toxic people are everywhere. They're in our workplaces, our families, our friendships, even in the environments we can't avoid. And here's the truth. You cannot control how toxic people behave, but you can control how you respond to them. That's your power. Today, I'm going to give you 11 smart ways to deal with toxic people. Practical tools you can actually use so you stop giving them power over your peace, your time, and your energy. This isn't about playing games, it's about protecting your life. Because at the end of the day, your boundaries define your strength. Let's get into it. When you deal with toxic people, one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to set boundaries and enforce them without apology. Boundaries are not about being mean, selfish, or cold. They are about drawing a clear line in the sand that protects your mental, emotional, and even physical space. Too often, people think that if they say no, or if they push back against someone else's behavior, they will come off as rude. But the truth is, toxic people thrive on those who hesitate to protect themselves. They count on you feeling guilty. They count on you second-guessing yourself. That hesitation becomes their open door to invade, manipulate, and control. When you create boundaries, you are not trying to control another person. You are simply controlling what you will and will not allow in your life. For example, if someone constantly criticizes you, belittles your choices, or uses sarcasm to chip away at your confidence, you don't have to argue with them or convince them to change. You simply state, I'm not going to engage in conversations where I'm disrespected. And the key part is, when they cross that line again, you don't negotiate. You enforce your boundary by ending the conversation, leaving the room, or disengaging completely. The consistency is what makes your boundary real. Words without follow-through are just noise, and toxic people know how to ignore noise. Enforcing boundaries without apology also means rejecting the guilt they will try to throw back at you. Toxic people often respond with anger, playing the victim, or trying to shame you into backing down. You'll hear things like, "You've changed," or "You're being so dramatic," or "Why are you overreacting?" That's not an accident. That is a calculated move to get you back into compliance. This is where you need to stand firm and remember that their discomfort does not mean you are wrong. Their frustration is proof that your boundaries are working. If you fall into the trap of over-explaining yourself, you are giving them ammunition. Boundaries don't need long speeches. A simple, firm statement is enough. Think about it this way. Every time you fail to enforce a boundary, you are teaching that person how to treat you. Toxic people are excellent learners when it comes to testing limits. If you give in once, they will take note and push harder next time. On the other hand, when you show them consistently that you will not tolerate certain behaviors, they eventually realize they have no power over you. Some will back down, others may cut ties altogether, but either way, you protect your space. Setting boundaries also reprograms how you see yourself. The more you practice, the more you realize that your worth is not up for negotiation. You stop seeking validation from those who drain you. You stop living in reaction to their moods and start living by your own standards. Boundaries become less about keeping others out and more about keeping yourself aligned. They're a reflection of self-respect, and when people see that you respect yourself, even the toxic ones know they can't play the same games anymore. The strongest boundaries are not shouted. They don't come with anger or defensiveness. They are calm, direct, and steady, because real strength doesn't need to raise its voice. The real power lies in the follow-through, knowing exactly what you will do if your line is crossed and then doing it. That level of consistency not only trains toxic people to stop testing you, it also teaches you that you can rely on yourself to protect your own peace. Detaching emotionally from toxic people is one of the smartest skills you can develop because toxic behavior feeds on reaction. When someone is manipulative, controlling, or cruel, they want you to take the bait. They want you to feel angry, upset, or guilty because those emotions give them leverage. The moment you allow yourself to get tangled in that emotional web, you've handed over your power. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people in general, and it doesn't mean you become cold or heartless. It means you make a conscious choice not to allow their words or actions to penetrate your peace of mind. When you emotionally detach, you're putting up an invisible shield. That shield is not about pretending the toxic person doesn't exist. It's about choosing not to absorb what they project onto you. Imagine someone throwing mud. If you stand there and argue about the mud, you end up covered in it. If you simply step aside and don't react, they're left holding their own mess. Toxic people hate that. They thrive on getting a rise out of you, and when you remain calm, neutral, and unaffected, you strip them of their favorite weapon. The practice of detachment starts with awareness. Pay attention to how your body responds when this person speaks or acts. Do you feel your chest tighten, your heart race, or your jaw clench? That physical reaction is a sign they're pulling you into their energy. The moment you notice that, you pause and remind yourself that you are not obligated to carry their baggage. You don't have to internalize their insults, negativity, or manipulations. That pause is the gap between their behavior and your response, and in that gap lies your freedom. One effective way to detach is to shift from emotional to observational mode. Instead of reacting with "I can't believe they said that to me," step back and think, "Interesting, they're trying to get me upset right now." It's the difference between being a player in their game and becoming a spectator who sees the strategy for what it is. When you observe instead of absorb, you create emotional distance. That distance allows you to choose a calm, measured response or no response at all. Silence can be one of the most powerful forms of detachment because it gives them nothing to work with. Another critical part of emotional detachment is recognizing that their behavior is not about you. Toxic people project their own insecurities, frustrations, and pain onto others. When they lash out, it's a reflection of what's happening inside them, not a reflection of your worth. Internalizing their words only gives weight to something that was never yours to carry. By detaching, you remind yourself that their issues are theirs alone, and you refuse to make them your burden. Detachment doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment. It means you decide how much access someone has to your inner world. You can still set boundaries, walk away, or cut ties when necessary. The difference is, you do so without anger consuming you or bitterness taking root. You remove yourself because it's the healthiest choice, not because you're trapped in a cycle of reaction. That's the kind of strength toxic people can't touch because it comes from a place of control and clarity within you. With practice, emotional detachment becomes second nature. The more you refuse to fuel toxic behavior with your energy, the weaker its grip becomes. Over time, you'll notice that their words no longer sting the way they once did, and their actions no longer dictate your mood. You take back control over your emotional state, and that control is what breaks the cycle toxic people depend on. It's not about winning an argument or proving them wrong. It's about refusing to play the game altogether. That's when you realize the most powerful response is often no response at all. Communicating with clarity, not confrontation, is a vital skill when dealing with toxic people because the more emotional and chaotic your communication becomes, the easier it is for them to twist your words, manipulate the situation, or use your reactions against you. Toxic individuals thrive in environments filled with conflict, confusion, and heated arguments because it gives them space to distract, deflect, and dominate. But when you communicate clearly and directly, you cut through their games and leave no room for misinterpretation. Clarity is your weapon, and it is far more effective than confrontation. The first step to communicating with clarity is to know exactly what you want to say before you say it. Toxic people will often bait you into reacting impulsively. They throw out insults, accusations, or passive-aggressive remarks hoping you'll explode or stumble over your words. When you rush to respond in anger, you hand them ammunition. But if you take a breath, slow down, and ground yourself before speaking, you regain control of the exchange. A clear statement like "that comment is unacceptable" carries far more weight than a long emotional rant. Short, precise communication strips them of opportunities to twist your meaning. Clarity also comes from focusing on facts, not feelings. Toxic people will often accuse you of being too sensitive or overreacting to minimize your concerns. If you frame everything in emotional terms, they will dismiss you easily. Instead, communicate based on observable behavior. For instance, instead of saying, "You make me feel disrespected," you can say, "You interrupted me 3 times while I was speaking." That factual framing is difficult for them to argue with because it's concrete and measurable. The more you rely on facts, the less space there is for manipulation. Another part of clear communication is maintaining a calm, steady tone. Toxic people are experts at escalating conflict, and if they can get you to raise your voice or lose your composure, they've gained control of the situation. By keeping your tone level and your body language relaxed, you project strength and confidence without aggression. You send the message that you will not be rattled. Calm, clear communication disarms their tactics because it denies them the chaos they thrive on. It also signals that you are not emotionally invested in their drama, which reduces their power over you. When you communicate, it is also important to be assertive rather than aggressive. Assertiveness means expressing your needs and boundaries firmly but respectfully. It avoids both extremes of passivity and hostility. For example, saying, "I need you to stop raising your voice when we talk. If it continues, I will leave the conversation," is assertive. It is clear, specific, and tied to action. It sets expectations without provoking unnecessary confrontation. Toxic people will often try to push back, but when you remain steady in your assertiveness, they eventually realize they cannot bulldoze you with intimidation or guilt. Equally important is knowing when not to engage. Clarity sometimes means recognizing that a conversation is no longer productive and stepping away before it devolves into confrontation. Toxic people will bait you into endless debates or circular arguments to wear you down. By saying something as simple as, "We're not getting anywhere with this, so I'm ending the conversation," you preserve your energy and avoid being pulled deeper into their chaos. Walking away is not weakness, it's clarity in action because you refuse to waste words where they will have no impact. Communicating with clarity also builds your confidence over time. The more you practice clear, assertive statements, the more natural it becomes to stand your ground without being drawn into unnecessary conflict. You start to trust yourself in difficult situations because you know you can handle them without losing control. Toxic people may never stop trying to push your buttons, but their efforts lose power when you consistently respond with precision instead of confrontation. What once felt like an exhausting battle becomes a simple exercise in control. You speak clearly, you protect your boundaries, and you move on without getting trapped in the drama they crave. Recognizing manipulation tactics and shutting them down is essential when dealing with toxic people because manipulation is their primary tool of control. They don't always come at you directly. Instead, they use subtle strategies to influence your thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that serve their interests. These tactics can be so sneaky that you may not even realize you're being manipulated until you feel drained, confused, or second-guessing yourself. The first step is awareness. Once you can identify the patterns, you immediately strip them of much of their power. Manipulators rely on you not noticing the game they're playing. When you learn to see through it, you take control back. One common tactic is guilt tripping. Toxic people know that if they can make you feel guilty, you're more likely to comply with their demands. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me," or "If you really cared about me, you'd do this." These phrases are designed to tug at your emotions and bypass your logic. The way to shut this down is by refusing to accept responsibility for emotions that don't belong to you. You can acknowledge their feelings without giving in to their demands by saying, "I hear that you're upset, but that doesn't change my decision." This keeps the focus on your boundary while refusing to carry the guilt they're trying to hand you. Another tactic is gaslighting, where they distort reality to make you question your memory, perception, or sanity. A toxic person might say, "I never said that," even when you know they did, or "you're imagining things," when you clearly saw the behavior. The purpose of gaslighting is to destabilize your confidence so you rely more on their version of reality. To combat this, trust your instincts and keep track of facts. If necessary, document conversations or remind yourself privately of what you know to be true. When confronted with gaslighting, respond with calm certainty rather than debating their lies. A simple, "I remember what happened, and we don't see it the same way," shuts down the argument without letting them twist your perspective. Toxic people also use flattery and charm as manipulation. They may shower you with compliments or favors to lower your defenses, only to use that goodwill later to demand something in return. This is often called love bombing in personal relationships, but it shows up in professional and social settings as well. To protect yourself, enjoy the compliment but stay alert. Ask yourself if the praise is genuine or if it comes with strings attached. By keeping your awareness sharp, you avoid being trapped by a cycle of obligation. Playing the victim is another common tactic. Manipulators will exaggerate their struggles or act helpless to elicit sympathy. They'll say, "Nobody ever helps me," or "I guess I'm always the bad guy," to guilt you into rescuing them. The solution is to resist the urge to fix their problems. You can empathize without enabling. A firm response like, "I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't take that on for you," acknowledges their feelings while making it clear you're not responsible for solving them. Recognizing these tactics is half the battle, but shutting them down requires consistency. Manipulators are persistent. They'll test your limits again and again to see if you cave. The more consistently you respond with calm, clear, and firm reactions, the quicker they learn their tactics won't work on you. Over time, they either adjust their behavior or move on to someone else they believe will be easier to control. Either way, you win because you refuse to play by their rules. The real power in shutting down manipulation is that it reinforces your self-trust. Each time you spot a tactic and refuse to fall for it, you strengthen your confidence. You realize that you don't have to be controlled by guilt, fear, or confusion. You can choose clarity over chaos, logic over emotional bait, and strength over compliance. That is how you break free from toxic influence and reclaim authority over your own life. Protecting your peace and walking away when necessary is one of the strongest moves you can make in dealing with toxic people, because it shows you value yourself more than you value winning an argument or proving a point. Toxic individuals thrive on pulling you into cycles of conflict, manipulation, or emotional chaos. They want to keep you entangled because as long as you're engaged, they still have power over you. Walking away may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're someone who values fairness, closure, or resolution. But when you realize that some people are committed to misunderstanding you, you see that protecting your peace is far more important than exhausting yourself in a battle that cannot be won. Walking away is not weakness, it is strategy. It is choosing not to waste your limited energy on people who refuse to respect you. The ability to disengage is a sign of strength because it requires self-control. Anyone can lash out, argue endlessly, or let anger take over, but it takes discipline to say, "This isn't worth my time," and physically or emotionally remove yourself. By doing so, you are not only protecting your peace but also sending a clear message. Access to you is a privilege, not a right, and if someone refuses to honor that, they lose it. Protecting your peace begins with recognizing when a conversation or relationship has reached a point of diminishing returns. Toxic people will often circle back to the same arguments, shifting the goalposts or bringing up the past just to keep you stuck. If you find yourself explaining the same boundary over and over again, or if every interaction leaves you drained and anxious, it's a signal that it's time to walk away. This doesn't mean you never revisit the issue, but it does mean you stop engaging in moments where the exchange is no longer productive. By pausing or stepping back, you give yourself space to breathe, regain perspective, and preserve your energy. Another aspect of protecting your peace is understanding that silence can be more powerful than words. Toxic people often thrive on reaction, whether it's anger, defensiveness, or even tears. When you refuse to react, when you choose silence instead of feeding their behavior, you strip them of the control they seek. Walking away in this sense is more than physical distance, it's emotional disengagement. You're no longer handing them the fuel they need to continue their toxicity. Sometimes protecting your peace requires more than walking away from a single interaction. It requires walking away from the relationship entirely. This can be one of the hardest decisions to make, especially if the toxic person is a family member, a close friend, or someone you've invested years with. But peace is not negotiable. If a relationship consistently brings you pain, drains your energy, and diminishes your sense of self, you must ask yourself if holding on is worth sacrificing your well-being. Choosing to walk away in these cases is not about giving up on people, it's about choosing yourself. When you commit to protecting your peace, you'll notice a shift in how you see yourself and your life. You'll stop feeling obligated to explain or justify your boundaries to people who refuse to understand. You'll begin to see peace as a form of power, not passivity. You'll realize that peace allows you to think clearly, live intentionally, and focus on people and experiences that actually add value to your life. Toxic people lose their grip because you're no longer playing their game. You've chosen to protect your own energy instead. In the end, walking away is not about them, it's about you. It's about refusing to let your life be defined by someone else's chaos. It's about creating space for calm, clarity, and growth. And it's about honoring yourself enough to know that you deserve a life that feels steady and safe, not one constantly shaken by the storms of others.